fancy my career as a Ringwraith extra, do you? Hey guys, welcome back to Planet Mithril, and today we are back with the next in our Let's Talk Tabletop series. We have finished the Fellowship now, all 9 members of that are done, so now we're going to start delving into some of the evil models and minions that rule the realms of Middle-earth, starting today with the Servants of the Dark Lord, the Black Riders themselves, the Ringwraiths. Nazgul, Ringwraith, Black Riders, these ultimate servants of the Dark Lord are ruthless in their pursuit of Frodo and the Ring, desperate to reclaim their master's prize and return him to full glory to wreak havoc over the world of Middle-earth. Now I need to prefix this episode with, I'm not going to be able to talk about absolutely everything to do with the Wraiths because they are such an intricate and in-depth tabletop piece that I'm probably not going to miss a few things, some synergies, some key bits. But we're going to try and get on through as much as we can during this episode. I'm also going to be doing the Witch King in a separate video because trying to do the Ringwraiths, plus their variants, plus the Nazgul of Dol Guldur, plus the Witch King and all his variants as well is going to end up being about a 2-hour long video. So the 9 can range anywhere between 55 and 110 points. This is down to the fact that they are a fully customizable piece on the tabletop, which I'll go into in just a moment, but we'll dial into their basic stats currently. They are all movement 6, they are fight value 5 with strength 4, so fairly consistent for most heroes. They have 1 attack and 1 wound, which is probably the bit that lets them down the most. When we get into the tabletop application in a little bit, we'll talk about how that can actually really affect them. They are courage 6, so nothing short of a flaming brand wielded by our once and future king is enough to make them shy away from a fight. When we get into their might, will and fate, this is where it gets slightly different, and this touches on the fully customizable element I mentioned a minute ago. So as standard, a Ringwraith has 0 might points, 7 will points, and 0 fate points. What you can do, you can up their might, will and fate to a higher threshold, each point respectively being 5 points extra. So a fully kitted out Ringwraith will be at the 110 point bracket, and that Wraith will have 2 might, 14 will, and 2 fate. So got a little bit of extra hitting power on the tabletop, not going to pop quite as easy when it comes to their spells. They've got enough will to get more spells off and last a bit longer, and they've got a little bit more stay power with their fate points, especially given that 1 wound characteristic they've all got. Each Ringwraith is equipped standard with a sword and heavy armour, which only seems to cover their feet, knees and their hands. I don't quite know where the rest of the heavy armour goes, but we don't know what goes underneath the black cloth of a Ringwraith, so you know what? It's like a Jawa from Star Wars. I don't need to see under that cloak. I'm going to trust that it's all okay and nothing terribly nightmare-driven in there whatsoever. They are all heroes of fortitude, so they can all lead 12 warriors per warband, and they have the heroic actions of Heroic March and Heroic Channeling. Obviously, you can only do this if you've upped your might points for each Ringwraith. The Channeling gives you access to the more powerful spells, and the Heroic March lets them and anyone else in their warband within 6, in fact any other model within 6, get a little bit closer to the fight a little bit quicker. Now for the crucial and most synonymous part of being a Wraith, their spells. They have a multitude of spells available to them which really help them fulfill that flex point and supportive piece on the tabletop. So to start off we have Drain Courage, which is cast on a 2+, which drains the courage value of a single model in range. We have Transfix, which is cast on a 3+, which effectively follows the rules for Immobilize. The channeled variant of this also halves the model's fight value and attacks. Compel, which is cast on a 4+, which has the same rules as Transfix, but also allows you to move one enemy model up to half its maximum move in any given direction, and then it will suffer the rules of a Transfix/Immobilize. We have Black Dart, which is cast on a 5+, which is their offensive magic spell, and does 1 single strength 9 hit with no in the ways to any given target. The channel variant of this does D3 wounds rather than 1, which is quite nice for sniping out some big key heroes. Instill Fear, which is also cast on a 5+, which is an aura-based spell. Every model within range, I think it's range 3, has to take a courage test chosen in order by the person casting. And if they fail their courage test, they move, I believe it's their maximum move away from the Ringwraith, directly away from the Ringwraith, stopping if they come into contact with any other models or scenery. So it's a really good way of positioning enemy troops and disrupting those battle lines if you can get one of those off at any given point during the game. And we have Sap Will, which is also cast on a 5+, which reduces the opponent's will reserves by D3 will points. The channel variant getting rid of these 6, so it's a really good way of stripping some really key resources off of heroes, particularly early doors, especially when you factor in if you get the spell off, they're kind of in a catch-22 because they're either going to have to put 1, maybe even 2 will points in to resist the spell because it's cast in a 5+. You're not always going to get that off on 1 resisted dice. And if they do that, they're still losing will anyway. And if they don't, they risk losing potentially all of their will, because I don't think anyone, apart from the big magic heroes, Gandalf, Galadriel, Radagast, the wizards, that kind of thing, have any more than 3 will points. So it's a really good way of kind of forcing your opponent to make a decision between 2 really bad choices. That being said, a 5+ to cast, it's not an easy cast for you either. But if you've beefed up your Ringwraith, you've got all the will points in the world to use. They have some special rules available to them, which is what make Ringwraiths feel properly unique on the tabletop. The first being the Harbinger of Evil special rule. That is a 12-inch aura from the Ringwraith. Any enemy model within that range minuses 1 courage from their courage value, which is very crucial and combines very well with their terror special rule. So if you want to charge a Ringwraith, you have to do a courage test. Factoring in the -1, it's going to really help knacker some of the lower courage armies that want to try and get in and take out your wraiths. And then we have the Will of Evil. Now this is where wraiths get a little bit delicate and a little bit more themey. Themey for sure. Every time a Ringwraith is engaged in combat and fights during the fight phase, they will lose 1 point of will. Now this is even if they win the fight as well. So regardless of if you win, if you lose, you will be losing 1 point of will every time you fight in combat with a wraith. Now that makes it really difficult to gauge how you should build your wraiths, and getting in combat with a wraith is really not what you want to do, particularly if you've been quite heavy-handed with spells in the earlier turns, because as soon as people start getting in combat with wraiths, which granted isn't the easiest thing in the world to do for general like rank and file models, because you're looking at average courage 3 -1 for Harbinger, so courage 2, you need an 8 to get into combat with a wraith, so it's not always going to happen. But if you start getting in combat with wraiths consistently, you can find that they start to drop really quickly, and that's also based on the fact that they've only got 1 attack and 1 wound. So yes, they could probably win a fight with fight value 5 against most general lower tier heroes and rank and file troops, but that 1 attack and 1 wound really puts them at risk if they get into combat. They are one of 9, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there are multiple variants of the wraiths. So we have the named counterparts, we have the Nazgul of Dol Guldur. You can only ever have any combination of 9 wraiths. You cannot have 9 wraiths plus 2 or 3 named ones, plus 2 or 3 Nazgul. You can only ever have 9 on the tabletop at once, because there are only 9. In regard to equipment, they can have a horse, which really helps their maneuverability, ups their move characteristic from 6 to 10. They can also have access to fell beasts, those big winged dragons that we all love to see soaring over Osgiliath and all the forces of good. Standard fell beasts are 50 points and the armoured fell beasts are 70 points respectively. The standard fell beast has only a move value of 3, but it does have flight, so it's moving 12 inches. They are fight value 5 with a 5+ shoot value. They are strength 6, defence 6, 2 attacks, 3 wounds, and courage 3. So the fell beasts themselves also have terror, because I mean, look at them, they're terrifying. You don't want to fight one of those on the tabletop, let alone in real life. They also have the feral special rule, so if the Ringwraith for whatever reason gets shot off the top of it or dies, the fell beast will just run away. It's not like wargs, I've fallen off my chair. It's not like wargs where if the rider dies, the warg can stick around if it passes the courage test. No, the fell beast will just disappear. It's decided it's not worth whatever's going on and would rather go off and find an easier meal somewhere else. So as I said, wraiths are the ultimate flex piece. They are primarily debuffers to the opponent's forces and don't necessarily operate well within their own army. They don't offer a lot that really helps buff their troops. The only kind of help they give their own forces is in regard to positioning of enemy troops and kind of keeping them out of danger by stopping other things moving, and that's with things like Instill Fear and Compel and Transfix. But in regard to actually buffing troops, they don't tend to do a great deal. They are primarily solitary pieces, at least in my experience I found them that way. And particularly if you mount them on a fell beast or a horse and they're running around where they need to get key position on the battlefield, wrecking face with teeth, claws and wings, or casting spells and key pieces with that extra bit of threat range from the horse or fell beast themselves. Positioning is key for wraiths, it really is. I've been in a position so many times where I've had 1 or 2 wraiths and I've overextended a little bit, or I've not pushed it far enough forward, so either I've lost line of sight at a spell, or I've put myself in a position where somebody can get into combat with me that I haven't necessarily seen, and as soon as a wraith gets into combat, it's probably good night Vienna, unless wonders happen. But yeah, so that's why you're relying on the horses and the fell beast for so much more manoeuvrability. Like flying a fell beast behind enemy lines turn 1 or 2, particularly if you've got a close deployment and you've got a battle line right in the front, in the middle. Flying a fell beast over the back and starting to wreck face, allowing your troops to come in the front, so it's kind of a two-pronged attack, is so good. And it's always so much fun to go Gondor bowling or to go anything bowling when you start hurling models down battle lines. That being said, lower Wraith costs can mean that you can get more warbands in the overall army. So, as I said then, they're primarily solitary pieces. The buffs they give their own army, again, are in regard to positioning, stopping key pieces from moving, stopping forces from moving, disrupting battle lines quicker than other big heroes would at that stage in the game, but also, you know, bringing more to the table. If you decide to go down the route of basic Ringwraiths at 55 points, that's less than most captains are, and you're getting... Okay, you're not getting the punch in regard to the fights and the attacks, but you're getting so much more flexibility in the movement, in the positioning, in the spells, in the resource draining as well. For less points than a captain's going to be, and you're bringing 12 models along with you at the same time. So particularly when you combine it with things like orcs or goblins, that kind of thing, you know, you're flooding the board with troops. So just like rule of poo, throw enough poo against the wall and some will stick. You throw enough orcs against a Gondor battle line and eventually some will take them down, right? The most effective spells they have, obviously the Black Dart, the Sap Will, the Instill Fear, probably the three, apart from Transfix, which is one that I find I've used quite a lot more than any of the other ones. But the top tier spells, at a 5+ to hit, you've got a 1 in 3 chance on a 6-sided dice per will point of casting it. Now, again, if you've gone for a lower tier Wraith with lower will points, you're probably looking at kind of wanting to throw 1 or 2 will points to this, maybe even 3 if it's a really key thing you need to get off. So you'll probably find that if you start trying to push these bigger spells through more aggressively, your Wraith is going to drain resources a lot quicker, puts them in jeopardy quicker. So it's a very careful balancing act of when to use these will points, when to know you need to force something through, and when to kind of dial off and ease back and start using some of the less potent and the less draining spells. And that just comes with practice, right? Rinse and repeat, trial and error in different situations, because no situation is going to be the same on the tabletop. So you want to really kind of gauge the effectiveness of the Wraith in any given circumstance and make that decision based on the battle you're fighting at the time. But, you know, what I love about these pieces is they can just be tailored to fit anything your army needs. If you need a killie piece, but aren't willing to spend so many points on the likes of Gothmog or those really big hitty heroes that don't necessarily have the stay power or the defensive shenanigans that the Wraiths do, you can tailor them to that. You can have a bog standard Ringwraith on a Fell Beast for, I think it's 115 points, and that's quite a lot to get for not a lot of points. You're looking at, you know, Fell Beast with Monstrous Charge, Terror, -1 courage for everything around it, and all the spells they bring, you know, with the access to brutal power attacks as well. So they can be tailored to fit anything your army needs. If you need a combat piece, they can be a combat piece. If you need a couple to sit there and just be spell machine gun platforms, they can do that as well. So that gives you so much flexibility when it comes to building an army, and that's before we even get into the named variants, which I'm actually not going to touch on this video. I'm going to do separate videos for each of those because each one of those deserves their own special video. I'll probably do 2 or 3 per video actually, because doing 9 of those is probably a bit much. The 1 wound is a massive worry every time. Any hero is generally strength 4. With strength 4 and defense 8, you're looking at one single roll of a 6 on a wound. On a wound roll, and that Wraith has popped, that Wraith has gone, or at least you're using fate points. Without the ability to up their wounds and attacks characteristics, yeah, you really want to be, if you're throwing them in combat, you want them on a horse, or you want them on the Fell Beast for that charge bonus, that knockdown, and the benefits that those mounts give you. You do not want to be throwing normal Wraiths into combat if you can avoid it. And again, with defense 8, normal warriors, strength 3, only need 6s and 4s. To do 1 wound. You need one of those to go through, and if you've got 2 or 3 models on a Wraith, it's not out of the realms of possibility that you could have a lucky roll and a Wraith could just pop to a normal Gondorian or a warrior of Rohan, something that it really has no right dying to effectively, or sorry, banishing, because they always come back. And as we've all seen during the Quest of the Ringbearer campaign, Wraiths without any might and fate points, they can drop to the smallest things. We've seen hobbits kill Wraiths in 1 attack, and it's made for a very sad jeb. A very happy Tom and a very happy Fellowship, but quite a sad jeb. It is worth mentioning as well, they have a particularly potent list to run in, and that is the Legendary Legion Black Riders list from the Quest of the Ringbearer scenario, Quest of the Ringbearer book, sorry, whereupon you can only have the 9. and you have the 9 on foot, or you have the 9 on horseback. But where this really shines here, and this doubles down on their ability to position enemy models and kind of keep their own protected just through existing, is their -1 courage from Harbinger gets exponentially multiplied based on how many wraiths are in range of certain models. So for example, if you've got one model within 12 inches of a Ringwraith, you're -1 courage. But I think it's if you're within range of between 4 to 6 wraiths, there are an additional -1 courage. So that's -2 courage. So your standard courage 3 models are at courage 1. And then if you're within range of between 7, I think it's 7 to 9 wraiths, you're at an additional -1. So it's -3 courage if you're in range of between 7 and 9 wraiths. That is insane. That is taking your big hitty heroes, Aragorn, Boromir and like, down to courage 3, which is going to start really putting pressure on their might point reserves, their will point reserves, and really gives you so much control, because standard warriors are going to be looking at needing a 10 on a terror test to get into combat. The caveat to this is that you can only have the 9 Ringwraiths in this list, so you're effectively running a 9 wound army. Other bonuses for this army list, they gain the Screech of the Nazgul ability. Once per game, every Ringwraith can cast, or can basically shriek, like this. That effectively counts as them casting the Transfix power, channeled version of Transfix, I need to state, and rolling a natural 6 against any target. So each one of those, you've got 9 free channeled Transfixes that are cast on a 6 for free, effectively with this list as well, which is horrible. The Ringwraiths in this army list is Legendary Legion. They do not lose the -1 will point every time they're in combat, so you can be a bit more cavalier with them. They don't lose will points, combined with the sheer fact you can still tailor them however you want. You can have all of them with 14 will points if you want, and they don't start losing will points in combat. So in this Legendary Legion, they can just go gung-ho with their will points for spells and not have to worry about being in combat. So it's a really, really strong list, I think. Not an easy one to run. Again, positioning is key. You know, if you start losing race, pressure is applied super quickly. I have run this list once or twice, and although it is super potent, once 1 or 2 races have actually popped, you're looking at, on average, a 40-50 model army against what is going to probably be 6, 7. And as soon as you start dropping below that courage debuff threshold, things start getting a lot harder for you and a lot easier for the opponent. So it's worth trying. I do really like the Legendary Legion. I think it's really themey, which is the most important thing, of course, and really potent. But if you're running it, just be aware those are the pitfalls and caveats of that list, I would say. So all in all, I think a Wraith's job on the tabletop is to kind of combo themselves with mid-tier heroes. Your Captains, your Goroths, your Zagdushes, you know, your mid-tier heroes. Because that makes for quite a potent combination. It elevates the effectiveness of mid-tier heroes, with the Wraiths pushing out all the debuffs and the draining resources of the enemy models themselves. So it gives you, effectively elevates the mid-tier heroes, which are what, 50-60 points a piece, to about the 80-90 threshold, because they can start really pulling their weight on the tabletop, with the Wraith doing all the kind of debuffing and the work in the background. That's when I kind of see a Wraith really fitting in on the tabletop, unless you're going for the big combat-y Wraith with the Fell Beast and the Wrecking Face and the tearing of Gondor armour and the maiming and the horror, the terror, the horror. Yeah, I think that's probably all I can really talk about the Wraiths. Again, I'm not going to do the title variants or the Nazgul or Dol Guldur in this video. The Nazgul or Dol Guldur will be in a separate video, and I'll do a couple of videos touching on each of the named Wraiths. I'll do 2 or 3 per video, and the Witch King will get his own video because he's got enough special rules and enough additions to him that adding it to this video is going to make it about a 45-minute long video, which we don't want. So you guys have heard enough of my waffling and my voice for today. I would love to hear any stories you've got of Wraiths doing either exceptionally well on the tabletop or apocalyptically bad on the tabletop. Flood the comments, I'd love to hear those stories. I hope you guys have enjoyed this recent addition to the Let's Talk Tabletop series. We'll be doing these more often again. Not sure what the next one's going to be, but I'll let you guys know on Instagram and the channel as and when we do. Please like, subscribe, and continue to support the channel. Really appreciate all the help you guys give us and all the support you give us going forward. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, guys, and happy hobbying.